Hi, my name is James Doherty. We're here today in the Granville Hotel on the Quays in Waterford City. And we're here to talk about the events of the Civil War in Waterford in 1922 and what would become known as the Siege of Waterford. One of several sieges of Waterford's had throughout the ages. We're going to focus on the events of June and July 1922. Just to step back from the Granville Hotel and where we are today to give a little background to the events that led up to the conflict. 1922, we have the signing of the peace treaty between the fledgling Irish state, the Free State, and Great Britain. The terms of this treaty caused a split within the IRA movement. What you see is individual brigades basically pick a side, pro or anti-treaty, and you see this jockeying for position. It's very much split almost on a kind of a rural divide. It tends to be more and more rural units tend to be anti-treaty. Dublin, predominantly the IRA units are for the treaty. What we have really is a division of the IRA movements, and this will culminate in the Siege of Waterford and the Irish Civil War, which starts on the 28th of June. In addition to giving a little bit of background on the Civil War, I also want to talk about what Waterford was like in 1922. Waterford was very much a city and county of contrasts. The city, very urban, predominantly Redmondite in its allegiances, and would have been very quiet place during the War of Independence, which was just previously ended. The IRA unit in the city and the east of the county were very quiet during that period. The county is a different matter. Especially towards the west, the IRA are very active in the War of Independence, and you'll see a much more militant outlook. The divide between the urban population of the city and what's more an agrarian and rural background to the county was defined by the split within the IRA movement. So by April 1922, the Four Courts building in Dublin, like many key buildings in Ireland, has been occupied by an IRA garrison. They are very much against the conditions of the treaty, and they refuse to leave the Four Courts. The Four Courts in Dublin, the Four Courts complex, will provide the spark that will eventually ignite the Irish Civil War. On the 22nd of June 1922, we see the assassination of a man called Field Marshal Sir Henry Wilson on the streets and actually on the steps of his home in London by two IRA gunmen. This is a major scandal in Britain. Parliament actually debate re-invading or attacking Ireland, and all kinds of discussions rage about should they bomb the Four Courts garrison from the air, should they send in the Navy to shell Dublin, and it really puts the Free State under a spotlight. The Free State administration is given an ultimatum by the British government: either get rid of the IRA garrison in the Four Courts in Dublin, or we'll do it for you. 28th of June, the shelling of the Four Courts garrison, the IRA garrison in the Four Courts begins, and when the Four Courts falls to the Free State, you see a move away from Dublin, and the IRA basically move or flee south. There is talk of establishing the Munster Republic and falling back behind the Munster line. Senior IRA figures will discuss this kind of north-south divide within the country. Now, unfortunately for the IRA, the Munster line and the Munster Republic is really a figment of various people's imagination. But you do see after the fall of Dublin to the Free State forces, the IRA have established a line from Waterford in the east of the county over to the west over towards Limerick. The IRA garrison that has occupied the old British Army barracks in Waterford is anti-treaty IRA. So Waterford now becomes a stronghold in this Munster line, and it becomes a key part of the defence of the south of the country for the IRA. So after the 28th of June, after the attack on the Four Courts, it becomes fairly obvious, fairly quick to the people based here in Waterford, the IRA men based here in Waterford, that Waterford at some stage is going to be part of the fighting, as part of this conflict. So you see preparations begin to be made as news of the Free State attack or impending attack on the city starts to spread, the IRA takes steps to prevent or to solidify their position. Along the quays where we're sitting today, all the main buildings on the quay are occupied by IRA men. Working down the quay, you have the Munster Express office, the Bridge Hotel. Here we are in the Granville Hotel. Heading back towards the post office, the GPO, and all the way down to the quay, Reginald's Tower, and the Imperial Hotel and the Adelphi Hotel further down the quay. The river beside us, the IRA take to raising the drawbridge on Redmond Bridge every night, and really the bridge over the river becomes almost like a medieval portcullis. It's raised and lowered at the request of the IRA, and eventually what you'll see is when the Free State do approach Waterford, this will be permanently raised to create a physical barrier along the quays. As well as garrisoning these key buildings, the IRA take other additional steps to improve their position here in the city. All shipping is ordered to move from the North Quay to the South Quay. This is to deny any Free State forces approaching boats to cross the river. Also, any wireless equipment is confiscated from boats based on the quay in order to prevent them sending any warning or any news to Free State forces. So what we see is really a gradual increase in tension. If you read the accounts of the time, though, it's very interesting. There's aspects of it which feel almost like a carnival aspects. You have crowds gathering on the quay to look at what the IRA are doing and to talk and hear the news. And same actually what happened in Dublin with the battle for the forecourts. Spectators will become a problem where people are vying for position to see all these activities and have to be pushed back by both sides of the forces. So that really gives us a little bit of a lead up to the events here in Waterford. And just to recap, Waterford has declared itself as an anti-treaty city, and it has declared itself as part of the IRA defences of the south of the country. Now, the IRA men based here in the city are anti-treaty, but a large proportion of the city would be actually for the Free State. So it's a very fractious situation here in Waterford as the Free State Army starts to approach the city. Tuesday the 18th of July 1922. News has been confirmed to this Waterford city that the Free State forces are preparing to leave Kilkenny and are marching towards Waterford to reclaim or to recapture the city from the IRA garrison based all along the quays. The bridge was raised the night before by the IRA and hasn't been put back down, so the bridge is left in a permanently open state. The IRA take last final measures to solidify and fortify their positions all along the quay, and they prepare for the coming onslaught. The Free State forces are commanded by General Prout, World War I veteran, and they're also led by a Waterford man, Paddy Paul. Paddy Paul had been very active in the IRA in Waterford before the Civil War, knew the city and knew all the people involved. And Paddy Paul would play a huge role in the siege, as he was also the gun commander of the 18-pounder artillery piece the Free State would bring with him from Kilkenny. So 12 o'clock on the Tuesday, at 18th of July, the Free State forces leave Kilkenny. Their journey from Kilkenny to Waterford is delayed because the IRA have dug trenches and felled trees along the route. About 3 p.m. they stop relatively nearby Kilmacow, just on the Kilkenny side. They receive absolution and mass and sacraments from a Reverend Green of Kilmacow, who gives them a blessing for what lies ahead. By about 6 p.m, Free State's troops, scout troops, start to appear on the high ground across the river from Waterford. Sniper fire starts. These are the first shots of the siege of Waterford. Snipers from both sides are firing across the high ground across the river as both sides try to determine the size and disposition of the opposing forces. 1845, approximately about 7:15 on the first day of the siege, a force of Free State troops descends from the high ground, Mount Misery and Ferrybank, down towards the railway station. One of these Free State volunteers is actually shot and wounded, and he will actually die 2 days later. but he was the first casualty of the siege of Waterford. By 9 o'clock that night, Pax Whelan, the IRA commander in Waterford, realises he's in a fairly desperate situation. He sends word by a courier who has the unenviable task of walking over 30 miles to Carrigan Shore, and he is sending word to Dinny Lacey. Dinny Lacey is an IRA commander based in Carrigan Shore, and Pax Whelan sends word to Dinny Lacey that his presence in Waterford is needed immediately, and he wants Dinny Lacey to attack the Free State troops massing in Ferrybank from the rear. It's one of these quirks of fate. If Dinny Lacey's attack had materialised as was hoped for or was planned by Pax Whelan, what would have happened? Well, we'll never really know, but we'll find out more about Dinny Lacey's movements as we look at the second day of the siege. Wednesday, the 19th of July, the morning will see sniper fire from both sides. Brisk sniper fire starts between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock on the Wednesday morning and will continue throughout the day. By 10:40, the Free State troops have manoeuvred their 18-pounder cannon across the golf links, the golf road over in Ferrybank, and the 18-pounder has taken up position on the high ground over in Ferrybank. The initial effectiveness of the 18-pounder cannon is somewhat muted by very accurate sniper fire from the IRA. It makes the firing and manning of the cannon very dangerous, so that the cannon initially isn't the decisive factor that it will become later on. Now, yesterday, on the Tuesday, Pax Whelan, the IRA commander, had sent word to Dinny Lacey in Carrigan Shore to send help. Dinny Lacey had wasted no time and had acted on this request immediately. And of the morning of the Wednesday, 200 IRA men under Dinny Lacey start to approach Ferrybank. Dinny Lacey has split his troops in two, or actually three small parts, but two main forces. By about 12 o'clock, one of these forces approaches Mullinlavat, County Kilkenny, and around the same time, another force is approaching Kilmacow, that general area, at a similar time. Now, confusion reigns supreme in a lot of conflicts, and this is what happens to Dinny Lacey on the morning of the Wednesday, the 19th of July. Dinny Lacey's men near Mullinlavat encounter a column or a group of Free State soldiers. This is actually just a supply column. They've literally just left the Free State forces in Ferrybank and they're dropping off food and supplies to the Free State. They're not a fighting unit and they're not on a particular mission to intercept the IRA or anything like that. But when Dinny Lacey sees this Free State column approaching Mullinlavat, he presumes that he's been attacked. He also presumes that his presence is known by the Free State forces in Ferrybank, which it isn't. A 2-hour running battle, a very confused gun battle, happens around the Mullinlavat area of Kilkenny. Dinny Lacey, the IRA commander, overestimates the size of the Free State force that he's engaged with. He believes the element of surprise has been lost, and he also believes that the Free State men are expecting him to arrive in Ferrybank and he's could potentially be walking into an ambush. So Dinny Lacey, after an hour or two of this confused fighting around Mullinlavat, issues the order to retreat, and he returns back to Carrigan Shore and his base of operations, and he abandons his attempt to attack the Free State forces in Ferrybank. The retreat of the IRA men to Carrigan Shore really marks the end of any potential hope of a help or rescue coming to the IRA men based here in the city. Another IRA column is asked to move from Dungarvan towards Waterford, but actually doesn't get the order, doesn't act on the order quick enough, and they play no part in the fighting. So by midday, approximately on the 19th of July, we see the shell fire from the 18-pounder cannon start to intensify. The Tramore train has been providing stellar service to the people of Waterford all morning and runs continuously over the days of the siege of Waterford. And we see an evacuation of a lot of citizens of Waterford, especially primarily from the city centre and the Ballybricken area, as they evacuate out to Tramore. At 4 o'clock, an artillery shell hits the Little Sisters of the Poor, the convent building in the Ballybricken area, and the nuns and the girls staying in the orphanage leave and walk out towards the county to safety. One of the shells fired by that 18-pounder cannon actually manages to hit or explode near the house of the artillery commander of the Free State, Paddy Paul. Now, there was always a rumour, I suppose, there was always a legend of, people would say, I heard Paddy Paul accidentally hit his mother's house. And it's one of these things that's almost too good to be true. But when you look into it, it did happen. And Paddy Paul actually wrote about it later. He said, look, it was kind of a consequence of war, and why should his family be exempt from damage and the fighting and the firing? And he thought that it was right to continue firing the cannon into Waterford City. So that's the Wednesday, the 19th of July. You have an intense artillery fire throughout the course of the day. In addition to the buildings along the quayfront here, the IRA have also occupied the two old British military barracks, the infantry barracks and the artillery barracks. Both of these buildings start to receive substantial shell fire from the 18-pounder cannon, and the IRA commander, Pax Whelan, decides that these buildings are untenable and he orders their evacuation. So as night falls on Wednesday the 19th of July, the two military barracks are abandoned. The IRA are still very firmly dug into the prime buildings along the quay here, but they've abandoned the two barracks, and they also have a very stout, very strong position in the old jail, which by its nature has very high, strong walls, etc. So as night falls, like I said, 19th of July, that's how the position of both forces lay. Thursday the 20th of July was one of the most active days of the siege of Waterford in 1922. Starts early. Just after midnight, 12:10, Free State launch a bold mission to claim the initiative in the fight for Waterford. Approximately 200 soldiers under the command of Lieutenant Mackey and Lieutenant O'Brien have marched from Ferrybank down the river, down towards an area known locally as Giles's Quay. They've commandeered several small boats, and they establish, I suppose, a little small ferry service. They crossed the Shore River, and they've now landed on the same bank or same side of the river as the IRA forces. They're well outside the city, heading out towards the east of the county, out the Dunmore Road area. But under cover of darkness, they start to make their way back into the city. They receive information from people they meet along the way as to the exact location of the IRA forces. And by approximately about 1:30 a.m. in the morning, they're approaching the IRA garrisons at this end of the quay from behind. 80 men, led by Lieutenant Mackey, burst into the back of the City and County Club. They catch the IRA sentry unawares, and they manage to capture the City and County Club without a shot being fired, and capture several IRA men in the process. They do this as well to the Imperial Hotel, which is now the modern-day Tower Hotel. And by this nighttime flanking manoeuvre, what they've effectively done is outmanoeuvred and outflanked the IRA all along the quay. 9 o'clock the next morning, a very intense gunfire opens up along the length of the quay as the IRA forces are going to gradually be pushed back up towards the quay and towards the Granville Hotel where we're sitting today. 9 a.m. Thursday morning, the 20th of July, the Free State men enter Reginald's Tower. They find a large cache of weapons and ammunition and also explosives. They soon realise that all the key buildings along the riverfront here in Waterford have been wired to be blown up or been detonated by the IRA. Now, luckily for history and heritage, and luckily for the streetscape of Waterford, that never happened. But by the morning on the Thursday, the Free State are starting to work their way up towards the quay. There's intense gunfire between the positions along the quay, the General Post Office, the Granville Hotel. But now, in addition to firing across the river towards Ferrybank, they're also firing up and down the length of the quay. So Outflanked, outmanoeuvred, the IRA position isn't an enviable one by Thursday lunchtime. By the afternoon of Thursday, the 20th of July, the shell fire from the 18-pounder cannon belonging to the Free State forces on the Ferrybank side of the river intensifies, as now the IRA have to contend with firing from both Ferrybank and positions that they formerly controlled on the quay. 6 18-pounder high-velocity shells crash into the GPO building just further down the quay, and the IRA order this position abandoned. So slowly but surely the Free State forces are working their way up the quay. The IRA retreat into where we are today, the Granville Hotel, and during that retreat, or this desperate flight along the quay, one IRA man, John Bonnie-Dial, is shot, and he will later die from his injuries. So by the evening of the Thursday, the 20th of July, by about 6 p.m, about 18 IRA men are surrounded here in the Granville Hotel, and they're starting to receive fire from every direction. After a fairly intense barrage of firing and some artillery shots from across the river, the IRA garrison here in the Granville Hotel surrender, and now the quay has been more or less abandoned by the IRA. Some of the IRA men in different positions along the quay managed to slip away, evade Free State forces, and they are now taking up position in the only significant building here in Waterford still held by the IRA, and that's the old jail, which is a very solidly built building up on the hill in Ballybricken, which overlooks the whole city. But this is the kind of final redoubt or the final position of the IRA on the Thursday afternoon. So the quay has been abandoned by the night of the Thursday, the 20th of July. The remaining IRA men in the city that haven't either fled the city or been captured have taken up position in the old jail in Ballybricken. Widespread looting occurs throughout the city as the Free State haven't established law and order, and also the IRA are very limited in their use or their manoeuvre through the city. So as Thursday night falls, you see fires spreading, you see looting, continuous sniper fire, and a very chaotic, very dramatic scenes here in the city. As previously mentioned, a large part of the civilian population of Waterford have camped out or have stayed out in Tramore. Luckily enough, the weather was very warm. The better off members of society have booked into all the Tramore hotels. Large number of people opt to just sleep on the beach. The arcade have a large tent that they offer people to sleep under, and it is reported by some accounts that a very jovial, almost carnival atmosphere exists in Tramore as people wait to return to the city and to see what damage has been caused. So the fourth and final day of Siege of Waterford, Friday the 21st of July. By the morning of that Friday, the last IRA position is the old jail, and sniper fire from the old jail persists, and various other sniper posts on the outskirts of the city. But the IRA position is becoming more and more untenable. Around approximately 10 in the morning, a Lancia armoured car is used to provide machine gun fire, and that machine gun fire covers the movement of the Free State 18-pounder cannon. It's moved down off the hill in Ferrybank onto a position on the bridge over here behind us. This enables a much more direct fire from the 18-pounder towards the old jail by Ballybricken. Several artillery shots hit the old jail, and this causes the abandonment of the jail. As the jail position falls, it's the last former position held by the IRA in the city, but the firing hasn't quite stopped yet. The Lancia armoured car, the machine gun, is manned by a Free State trooper called William Howlett, and he is shot and dies instantly. He's hit by very accurate sniper fire, which was fired from somewhere we think around the Bilberry Rock position, and dies instantly. But as I said, the IRA have now begun to abandon the city. They slip away, some men are captured, more men slip away, they regroup outside the city, and they will continue to fight for another day. The Free State enter the city. By 6 p.m, the bridge, Redmond Bridge, is lowered back down into the open position. Free State troops march out onto the bridge and a volley of shots is fired to celebrate the successful capture of the city. 10 people will die during the siege of Waterford, and it's in the big scheme of the amount of casualties that were inflicted. It wasn't a huge battle, but it was a very significant event in the overall history of the Civil War here in Ireland. And it's right that people explore it and try and get a better understanding of what happened and why it happened. So just a little bit about the aftermath of the siege of Waterford. Although the IRA have abandoned the city, it doesn't become a peaceful place immediately. Just 2 days after the siege ends, young Emily de Courcy, a civilian who was wounded in the fighting, will die from her injuries. 2 weeks after the siege ends, Captain Edward O'Brien is gunned down or shot in a short course area of Ballybricken. Edward O'Brien was the Free State lieutenant that helped lead their forces across the river at Giles's Quay. A fire was lit in an abandoned RSC barracks in Short Course, and O'Brien led a small team to investigate. An assailant stepped out of the dark, and O'Brien was shot dead and dies instantly. Now, whether this was a targeted assassination in response for helping to lead the Free State troops across the river, we'll never really know. But as I said, the violence doesn't end straight away. Ireland in 1922, even as the conflict of the Civil War passes over in certain areas, there's still a lot of weapons around, there's still a lot of grudges and disagreements and personal vendettas and inter-family and inter-community violence that can be facilitated because the forces of law and order are so busy basically pursuing and fighting the Civil War. So it's still quite a disturbed situation overall, and only gradually will we see a return to kind of normality in the city and in the county.